Welcome to the Family Office Sherpa podcast. I'm your host, Shaun Parkin, founder and managing director of Whole Road Investments. The aim of this podcast is to provide practical and implementable advice for those looking to build, manage or service a family office. This is not, however, investment advice, so please check the disclaimer in the show notes. In this episode, I'm interviewing Ben Edmonds from Albert's Family Office.
This is the Family Office Sherpa.
All right, welcome, Ben. Very appreciative of you taking your time. The first interview for the Family Office Sherpa, so I'm extremely excited. And again, thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, g'day, Shaun. Happy to be here.
So, the first question's for Ben. Look, as you know, this podcast is really around the scaffolding, the pieces around the edge. But I'd really like to start with an overview of the office. It's a really interesting office, so I'd love your thoughts on it.
Yeah, sure thing. So I'll try to distill 140 years of history down into something a bit more succinct. And it is interesting, and to be fair, I love telling the story. Perhaps the first thing to clarify is that I'm not actually a family member, but have been with the business now for 11 years. Actually, in a couple of weeks, it's my anniversary. So definitely have a pretty good handle on things, and that includes not just the business side, but obviously just the family dynamics as well. So going right back to the first gen, Albert started with an immigrant Swiss watchmaker who came out in the late 1800s to do watch repair out of Newtown, I believe. Then moving into music after that, selling instruments and sheet music, which really kicked off the music publishing business around that time. That evolved into, heading over to New York, presumably by ship at that time, going to Tin Pan Alley, acquiring rights from, the likes of Irving Berlin and people at the time, Tin Pan Alley, bringing those back to Australia, printing them in songbooks, which were called Boomerang Songsters. Also selling boomerang mouth organs around that time, which one of them actually featured in Baz Luhrmann's Australia film, so you can go and look that up. But that was really the genesis of the music business for Alberts back then. Moved on to radio as radio became more popular. Ended up with a stable of radio stations. Those were held for kind of circa 60 years and were sold in the 90s. Also, Alberts were early into TV, so we're early investors in Channel 7 back in the 50s. Moved then into, I guess, what if you are aware of Alberts, most people would be probably more familiar with the music production side of things in the 60s and 70s. Started, with the likes of Billy Thorpe, the Easybeats, John Paul Young, and then moved into, the Angels, Rose Tattoo, and obviously AC/DC. The music business kind of ticked along in various kind of forms until circa 2016, when we sold a lot of it to BMG. Did retain certain assets, which has been a good thing for us. We then, I guess, moved into what probably looks more like a traditional sort of family office model, with a range of different assets. Important to note, though, that we don't do a lot of the things for family members that perhaps others do, certainly in terms of some of the professional services or concierge type services. We're probably more of a family in business than, a holistic range of, sort of family office services and services to family. Currently run by the fifth generation. So all of the fifth generation sit on our head company board. We moved into impact focused venture capital. So have a venture capital portfolio. We invest across 4 different themes, which are equality, vibrant culture, healthy minds, and sustainability. Have circa 22 positions, pre-seed, seed, and Series A. We have a focus on philanthropy. So we have a foundation, which is a PAF called the Tony Foundation, which has been going since 2012. And that has a focus on improving the lives of young Australians through music. So our grantees generally are aligned with that. We also have an impact mandate for the portfolio that sits behind that foundation as well, which currently has a no harm rating from Australian Impact Investments. So that's probably something that's a bit more pioneering in terms of shifting that portfolio to an impact mandate. We've got other elements of what we do. We run a music education initiative. We've got to focus on championing DEI, leadership and advocacy, which is really, I guess, trying to demonstrate to others operating in our world some of the things that I just mentioned as well, in terms of what we're trying to do and the impact focus and trying to create a better world and hopefully demonstrating that that's something that is, having an actual impact and would be appealing for others to try as well.
That's excellent. Thank you. It's such an interesting story and it does really show that evolution, doesn't it? And the music rights piece is such a fascinating thing. And I'm sure everyone listening to this probably recognizes a lot of them. Obviously, this is a relatively global podcast. So I think AC/DC, is an incredibly interesting sort of story in terms of music rights. And that's quite in the news at the moment. Now, you're the Chief Financial Officer, right? So, and I've always said, and the previous podcast I sort of mentioned, which is one of the most important parts of the single family office is the CFO. So, and the job that you do there. And the reason why I sort of bring this up is because the scaffolding, which is obviously a focus for this podcast and the conversations, is a lot of the time, the CFO is a big part of that structuring and that curation of that infrastructure. So can you give us a little bit of an insight into the office's, support network or that supporting infrastructure? Ones that are new, ones that have been challenging to get right would be fascinating to sort of hear.
Sure. And it might have been useful just to touch on the structure of the office itself.
Perfect.
We're a team of 17, which I think is probably quite large for a family office as well. We do a lot in-house and obviously that's reflected in the number of people that we have. In terms of governance as well, we've definitely got to focus on governance and good governance. So we have 2 boards, one that has all of the family members on it, one that has a combination of family and independents. We have a range of investment committees for our main portfolio, for our foundation portfolio, for our venture capital portfolio. We also have a grants committee for the Tony Foundation. We have a nom and rem committee. So again, I'd say for a family office, probably fairly sophisticated, but it clearly reflects how we want to operate in terms of being best practice, in terms of wanting to manage risk. And hopefully, make really sound decisions. In terms of how we kind of operate, sort of day to day, as I said, we've got a pretty big team. We also have a pretty good support network around us. So we have tax advisors that we use who are very much long-term partners. We have auditors. And with both of those, we stay very highly engaged throughout the year, just on a range of different subjects and things as they come up. We certainly don't wait until our annual audit rolls around, which we've basically just come to the end of that, as we speak. Before we raise certain things, we just want an ongoing dialogue. Again, in the interest of, being best practice, managing risk and just making sure that we're always doing things to a high standard. We have a suite of lawyers that we use. We have entertainment lawyers, property lawyers, employment lawyers, venture capital lawyers, and probably others that I've forgotten. Again, we just want to do things as best we can. And perhaps like a lot of family offices, we're pretty diverse in terms of what we do, and perhaps even more so after 140 years of just acquiring certain things and kicking off certain operations. We have a broad range of things that we're kind of managing, and for that we certainly need a broad network of supporters. We also have impact advisors, and certainly that's been really important for us in terms of developing our impact framework, the responsible investment framework for the Tony Foundation, and just, I guess, ongoing advisory around impact and just some of the various initiatives that we're running, which includes expanding our impact framework to be incorporated into pretty much all of the assets and operations across the business. We outsource our IT, and we have 2 providers for that. One for the day-to-day, and then another one which is a fairly new one, the cyber risk. Obviously, that's something that we're all very conscious of these days, and we certainly lean pretty heavily on both of those to get the right solutions, and clearly as well, those 2 have communications between them as well, given the relationships there. We use advisors for different things at times, such as, family office type stuff, succession planning, etc. We engage with investment professionals. We've got relationships, with the big investment houses around town, but we don't do a lot in terms of, say, allocating capital to them to invest. I mean, per the structure that I described before, we do a lot of that in-house and have the capability to keep doing that. But it's more just getting a sense of, what's happening around the world. So having dialogue, with the professionals within and just making sure, I guess, we're in tune with what's happening.
Is that in the form of like an investment committee or something similar? Is that how you utilize those external parties? Or is it more of a on piece by piece sort of have a call and hope there's some dialogue, or is it like a little bit more formal, that relationship with external investments?
It's definitely informal these days. It's more, let's say we could have someone come out to speak to the investment committee and just say, this is our view of the world, or maybe even talking about a particular kind of issue, like say the sort of geopolitical side of things. It could just be, myself and our portfolio analysts catching up for a coffee with someone from one of the big investment houses and just get a sense of what's going on. Or we might need something specific. We might be looking at, doing some hedging or something, and we want some advice on that. But we're pretty light on the formal engagements and sort of relationships in that regard these days. And it's just because we've built up the internal capability to be able to do most things ourselves.
Yeah. And so you mentioned IT and cyber. I think that's something that everyone is really focused on at the moment. And I guess that old adage is, which is, if you don't have the internal skill set, very much get the experts in to do that. What about other sort of more operations and technology pieces? Are you from let's look at technology then and operation, investment reporting as an example. I mean, how have you viewed that sort of aggregation of all the data and things like that? Is that a challenge for you at the moment, or is that something that's ongoing? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I'd say it's probably both. It's challenging and it's ongoing. I mean, we use a broad range of systems across the whole business, and one of those is an investments system, and it's a much bigger system than we probably need. Hence, I guess, sort of part of the challenge in terms of it might be, say, fitting a square peg into a round hole, with us, and then in the back end of that, figuring out what is the useful information for us as compared to, say, if Morgan Stanley or JB Weir is using the same system, and no doubt their needs are sort of vastly different to ours. I mean, we have, obviously finance systems, we have a royalty system. In fact, we have two. We've got a reporting system that plugs into most of our other systems that is able to sort of mine the tables in the database or databases. That is okay, but I think that's where one of the challenges for us has been in recent times, just trying to get that to be fit for purpose. We use tools for organization and collaboration. So we use Airtable, we use Microsoft Teams and Planner. I'm perhaps a reformed Trello user. I'm being pushed into Planner, which is fine, just so we have a consistent approach to those sorts of things. We have building management systems, we have governance software, we have payroll software, and I think I'm moving a bit away from the investment side now, but you probably get a sense that one of the challenges we have with systems is just the number of systems. Yeah, and we've actually rationalized some of the systems even to get to the list that I just gave you.
Yeah, right. So I guess that brings up the question: who's responsible for all these systems? I think you have, like you said at the beginning, a relatively big team for a family office, particularly in Australia. Is there a centralized? Is it you? Is it who's the responsible person for, I guess, curation and then management of these systems internally?
Yeah, it's a great question. In the past, we've had, I guess, system owners, based on, I guess, who were the system users. So, in my team, very much owning, the finance system, the royalty systems, the reporting system. And we've sort of moved to a more kind of centralized model in recent times, where we've got a new hire who's actually taking forward a business effectiveness project that we've been running for a little while, and is, reviewing, this type of thing. How can we be more effective? How can we be more efficient? How can we, within that, have systems that have been rationalized just down to what is useful, and how can we get consistency? And even coming back to my Trello and Planner example, when you've got a team of 17, you end up with a bunch of people who like to use certain things. And so we end up going off in different directions. And because we do so many things, again, you've got, people from different backgrounds with different experiences that probably want to use certain things based on their past or what they think their particular operation would be best served by. But we have tried to find some consistency, and hopefully that does lead to, something that is a bit more effective and efficient.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's the whole point of curation, right? And curating this infrastructure so that it's effective and it's not causing a lot of confusion. I mean, coming into an office for the first time, because you get new hires and things like that, and then this is our system. Even if you've never used it before, being able to say, well, this is for this, this is for this, and creating that efficiency, I think, is really good. But like I said at the top of the call as well, I mean, a lot of that time, that discipline comes from the finance team. Do you find that as well? Like, does it tend to be led by the people that there's a requirement for them from a compliance point of view, tax and cash flow and things like that, whereas investments, and I come from an investment background, which is kind of fugazi, is a little bit pixie dust in terms of the reporting, right? You can kind of make it to a certain degree look how you want, but the ultra compliant, there's no flexibility part of it. Is that where it tends to be driven by the finance team?
I would say yes. I would say also, we're kind of one and the same at Alberts. Our portfolio analyst is a member of my team. He's also a CA, so he comes from an accounting background and also came from a Big Four. So he understands, the compliance side and elements of reporting, which aren't, fugazi, if you like. And, really, in terms of the systems I mentioned as well, I mean, a lot of those are coming sort of, out of my team or are being utilized by my team. And so I guess we do end up having a, pretty heavy influence over it. And back on compliance, I mean, it doesn't matter how we want to present things. As you said, I mean, compliance is what it is. And there are certain things that we just have to do and certain rules that we have to follow. And, a lot of the compliance, if not kind of all, is handled by the finance team as well.
So I guess keeping to that theme a little bit, if you look at your infrastructure, you look at your total office, and if someone said to you, right, you've got one silver bullet here and you can fix this one thing, what's that at the moment? Like, what do you say? Well, that would be awesome if I could get that fixed immediately.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just comes back to that, effectiveness and efficiency piece, and for us getting to the end of the road, on that project. So and that is, it's looking at data, it's looking at separate projects, tasks. It's looking at how we kind of manage stakeholders across that, communications, just a whole range of things. And, I don't think where we're at is based on, 140 years of history. We're not kind of carrying that burden around, but even the fact that, we've got, a few decades under our belt, which again is perhaps somewhat unique compared to a lot of other family offices. We have, a decent sized team, and a lot of whom, have been with the business for quite some time. I'm 11 years. I've got people in my team that are well over 20 years. In fact, a couple of them. My finance manager, I think, is in her 13th year. So I think for us to try and stay fresh and on the cutting edge as well, we have to do these projects periodically, and we have to sit down and kind of call them projects and sort of ring fence them and say, we're now going over here to do this. Because I think at some point, continuous improvement doesn't sort of get you to those sort of leaps that you need, perhaps to be best practice. So the silver bullet would be, could we just get to the end of that like now? But obviously we need to run through a process to be able to get there.
Now you bring up an interesting point, which is, and this capacity challenge, right, within an office, which is to say everyone's kind of got their day-to-day. And if you see this big gap in the infrastructure or the support, and like you said, to a certain degree, there's sort of the cohesion of all these moving parts, it's hard to drag someone out of that, or to sort of go, well, if you get time, do this. If at the end of the day, you've got this, if you've got any spare time, like a side of desk kind of approach. And I guess what you're saying here is that unless you give it a real project or a project name and you go, well, this is the goal, this is what we're expected to be, we give it a timeline, we allocate the right resources to it, it's just not going to get done. Do you find, is that fair? Like, you got to just bite the bullet and put some allocation to it?
It's exactly where we're at. I would say we really struggle, I think, to allocate time to these projects. And, as I'm sure you've got a sense of in this discussion alone. I mean, we do a lot. There's a lot going on, and it's great. I mean, these are the things that we all enjoy, and I think that variety is probably why a lot of us have been with the business for so long as well. But I think we are definitely a team of hard workers, and we still really struggle to find time to do these projects and extra things. And that is actually part of the remit of our new hire as well, just to develop a roadmap for getting some of these things done, and that cascades right down from it's basically the top out sort of vision and through to our strategic goals, initiatives, and what are the underlying projects that we're now trying to execute, and how can we prioritize those? How can we take a read of our kind of core baseline work, and I guess the ebbs and flows of that as well. I mean, you think about the finance team with quarterly reporting, annual audits, annual tax, and all that kind of stuff. Like, where are the potential opportunities to get some of these things done? And if we can't find those, then I guess there are two options. You either scale back your ambition, or you need to, or perhaps three, you need to find more resourcing, or you need to find some efficiencies.
Yeah, and that's the challenge, right? I mean, trying to find more resources, and you do that internally, or do you look at what the outsource piece looks like as well? And I know, like at the beginning, you said you do have a lot of support networks outside of the office. How much can you leverage them and potentially give them some of the project work, I guess, is the other option too, right? Which is to sort of get some outside consulting and project work done by external firms as well.
Well, the efficiencies, that's an interesting one as well, because it becomes a bit of a catch-22. We might say, well, we don't want to scale back our ambition, and we also don't want to increase the size of our workforce or outsource, but to actually, find those efficiencies, that, again, like it is for us, is a project that requires time, but then no one has the time to execute the project. So you're just kind of stuck.
Yeah, it's the execution piece that, in the past, you do work and you do scoping and you map out what needs to be done, and then you give them the report, and then they say, okay, this is exactly what we should do. Then you talk to them in a year or two's time and you go, well, how did that go? It's like, oh, we haven't been able to actually execute because this popped up or this happened. And so I guess, like you said, having some defined projects and timelines and checkpoints, I guess, is seems to be the only way to get that efficiency, I guess. And also, you talk to other family offices, I do, and we do. It's becoming a little bit more collegial, which is fantastic, a little bit less secret squirrel out there. When you do talk to family offices, not necessarily similar to you, but, facing similar challenges and things like that, do you get a general sense of what they're all challenged by, to give some sort of idea around what's the common, not complaint, but common challenge maybe?
Yeah, it's a lot of other family offices. I think it's great that generally we're not in competition with each other. When you think about other kind of businesses or sort of areas where you wouldn't want to share information. I mean, I think we should be sharing as much as people are comfortable to share and help each other. Also because it's such a niche area, sort of relative to other things that businesses do. So it's very useful to share things. In terms of challenges, I mean, I love the saying that I've heard you say many times as well about, you've met one family office, you've met one. And I think the challenges are probably different with every single one. I think I've never come across another family office that sort of looks like ours.
No, me neither, to be honest. No, it's very unique. Which is what I love about it, yeah.
Yeah, and you just think about the structure, the people, what we do. Again, you've met one. So, but I know that, there are challenges across the sort of, operational level in terms of, how people are going about their investing, their sort of structuring, and then there are the separate challenges, I guess, at the more sort of family level as well. Particularly, as things are kind of moving through generations. I think that's obviously one that we all have to deal with at some point in time. I probably deal, and perhaps this goes without saying, but I deal more with family offices that are, like second gen, third gen. Pretty rare that you come across one that's sort of fifth. And we also have a sixth gen that's, maturing. So yeah, I'd say the challenges are quite different to ours for the most part, but yeah, there are the odd sort of similarity. I'd like to think, because we are a bit more mature, that we can be quite useful as well. Just in sort of sharing our story and how we've navigated some of our challenges, even if others haven't quite got to that point with their own family offices yet. But, it might prove useful one day.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. It's the idea, and this is a lot of time around conversations where, and I'm sure you find this as well, which is even though everyone's unique in terms of a family office, because it's people led, right? It's the same that every individual is unique. You kind of have this uniqueness there, but there's homogeneity there, and a lot of that is around, like you said, operations and technology. There's, what's the reporting look like? What does what systems are you using? What, have you had experience with this, investment reporting platform or this one? So do you find that sometimes you can just be a little bit of a sounding board to maybe circumvent, say, 2 or 3 years of heartache of trying to find this and then try one and it didn't work? And do you find that almost, because like you said, you are a very sophisticated office in a relative sense, and you're not competing with other family offices because it's not that kind of business. Do you find yourself being that sounding board a lot of the time? It's just like, we tried this, this, and this.
Definitely. And I love it when people reach out and ask me questions about, have you had an experience with X, Y, Z? And, it's great if we have, and, we've got some, valuable feedback that we can provide. I also like to do the same. And obviously, we've built up a nice kind of family office network, and even sort of within Alberts, we've got sort of different networks, and then we've got kind of broader networks that we're all engaged with. And generally, if you're sort of looking to do anything and you've got any kind of challenge in front of you, you can pretty much think of someone to ask. And even if it's for me to ask someone internally who, then in turn knows someone to ask, but it's pretty rare if we're sitting there scratching our heads going, we have no options here. We're just going to have to, Google it or whatever. Like there's generally someone that you can lean on in the space. And then I guess the other thing that I'm sure you're seeing as well, and even just in my 11 years in sort of family office land, is just the maturing of the family office space in this country. Obviously we do trips up to the US and we've met lots of family offices up there, and, it's a much more mature scene up there. But yeah, definitely, things are happening here. There's a lot more, I guess, players coming into the space, both in terms of the family offices and then also that sort of support network that we were talking about before. And things are different, very different to how they were kind of 10 or 11 years ago.
So it's something to tap into a little bit, I think, is the idea that there's, I don't want to necessarily call it increased sophistication because I'm not sure if that's the right term, but how would you describe maybe over the last sort of 4 or 5 years that you've seen the evolution of family offices? At least everyone knows what you're talking about now, right? And I'm sure you found this 11 years ago when you said, "Oh, I work for a family office." Like, what's that? I don't know what you're talking about. Are you finding it? You mentioned service providers. Are they starting to become a little bit more, I don't know, channel oriented, or just segmenting family offices differently? They're not institutional. They're not wholesale. They're certainly not retail, but they kind of got little bits of pieces of each one of them. Are you finding that the scaffolding or the support networks out there are going, well, actually, we're starting to understand this niche a little bit better and becoming a little bit better at servicing it? Are you finding that?
I think so. I mean, firstly, I also didn't know what family office was all about when I got this job. I hadn't even thought about it, and it just sort of wasn't on my radar, which perhaps is either just me or, again, was a reflection of what things were like 11 years ago. I mean, we both know that in terms of servicing, family offices, it has primarily been about investing, but it does feel like in terms of other support areas like tax and legal, etc., that there are specialists popping up around who perhaps have spun out of some of the bigger firms and had family office clients and have now seen that there's an opportunity, and the market is now big enough and mature enough that they can run these bespoke operations, servicing really just family office clients. And that's something that we're aware of. We know that lots of our contacts use services like that. So it feels like it's starting to broaden out a bit now beyond just investment services,
which is a good thing, right? That makes it more efficient, more effective.
Yeah, absolutely.
So just on because you mentioned before that the investment analyst sits underneath within your office. Can you give us a sense of how the finance and CFO interacts with the investments? Because just to glean that, just to get a little bit more information on that, just because I know I'm not sure if you have a defined investment group, a defined finance group, just how that interaction works.
It seems to me like another area where we're unique is, from what I can tell, a lot of family offices will have a C-suite that includes a CIO. We don't have a CIO. We obviously, as I mentioned, have a range of investment committees, but it's something that I guess we've contemplated in terms of having that level of in-house financial sophistication, and we will continue to contemplate that sort of longer term. But to date, what we have from a structure perspective has worked well for us, having the investment committees, and then I guess having the finance team with some investment capability within. But it's certainly more, and to the title of our portfolio analysts, like, it's more just on that reporting piece, the kind of administration. Certainly also being across the investments and being able to bring things forward for consideration by the committee as well. But very much perhaps different to other offices that are much smaller, where you've got, say, a CIO making a lot of the decisions, or perhaps bringing those forward to an investment committee of a handful of people for sign off. For us, the committee itself is primarily feeding the pipeline, and then of course, assessing opportunities and where the delegation is able to deploy capital as well.
So you run off an investment policy I'm assuming, yep. And then the implementation of that investment policy is within the remit of the investment committee, and the support of that from a data and analytics perspective comes from, I guess, the analyst that sits within your group. So the investment committee is actually it was almost like a portfolio management committee as well. So they're making decisions and allocations and things like that.
That's correct. They're definitely able to make decisions, within the letter of the framework, and certainly on the deployment side, once those decisions have been made, it is up to the analysts to go and sort of action that, and then the back end reporting as well. Yeah,
like you said, it is. I mean, you do find most single family offices have some sort of CIO or head of investments or something like that. So I find it really interesting, sort of the way that you've got set it up. I'm assuming that there's got to be some significant robustness in the investment policy then, right? Because that's going to be really dictating the way that those interactions are, and the roles and responsibilities are very clear. And you alluded to that at the top of the call, which is that governance is a big part of the way that the office is run.
Yeah, I think we have a pretty robust framework that we developed that circa kind of 12, 13 years ago, and it's just a document that has been evolving since then. It's signed off by the board, and it also is robust enough that it means the IC can operate so independent of the board or anyone else, and has that mandate there to go forward, which of course is much more efficient. And when you think about the structure that I've described, I mean, it could be much more complicated if we didn't have a framework that gave the committee sufficient delegation to just get on and invest, and particularly when some of those investments need to be timely decisions and deployments.
Yeah, exactly. All right, that's great, Ben. So that's all for my questions. Like I said, I find the office fascinating. It's such a unique structure. For an Australian office in particular, it's such a legacy, and the names of the bands obviously resonate a lot both in Australia and globally. So thank you very much for the overview. What I'd like to do at the end of each one of these interviews is just to maybe give a bit of a shout out to one of the charities that's supported by Alberts. I know that it's very vocal around sort of some of the charities, but maybe one that you'd love to shout out and maybe give a little bit of support to.
Sure. And this one might be a little bit unique, but certainly speaks to our history, and also one of our impact themes being vibrant culture. And it's called Support Act. And so Support Act, it's the music industry's charity for delivering crisis relief and support to musicians, managers, and crew, etc. And really for those that are unable to work, say due to health reasons, or which that's either physical or mental or some other crisis. And when you think about, say, during COVID, and how the sort of live music industry was impacted, I mean, Support Act was pretty pivotal around that time, in coming in and supporting people within the industry. And actually, I'll just add one more thing. I mean, they do a lot of really cool things in terms of fundraising, and there's actually one coming up in a few weeks' time, which I'd recommend you check out. It's Australian T-shirt or Music T-shirt Day, I should say, on the 27th of November. So we like to put on our Australian band shirts. Support Act actually supply a bunch of limited edition shirts as well, which, all net proceeds go to Support Act itself for charity. But that is a fun way to sort of get together and, as an office for us, to get the shirts on, have a photo and really celebrate Australian music and also, the charity of Support Act itself.
Fantastic. Thanks, Ben. Really appreciate your time and thanks for everyone for listening. If you want more information around Albert's, the website's actually pretty good too, right, Ben? Like there's a lot of information that's kept on there. Really appreciate your time. You're my first interview, so hopefully it wasn't too painful. For everyone listening, if you want more information around the Family Office Sherpa, go to familyofficesherpa.com. And if I'd love to put a rating or a ding the little bell so you can listen to the next one, feel free. But Ben, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it.
No, good, Shaun. It was fun. And, if anyone wants to look me up on LinkedIn as well, feel free. Happy to connect.
Excellent. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Shaun.